I know it's crazy, but it's
You're watching Channel Z, the world's leading zombie apocalypse channel. Broadcasting live from Studio Z.
Makes me act the way I do.
Good afternoon, intrepid survivors, and welcome to the Go Bag Challenge. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Zarka. Today, we would like to welcome our judge, Chelsey Weber-Smith, host of the podcast American Hysteria, that covers conspiracy theories, moral panics, and fantastical thinking, and how they affect our psychology and culture. Thank you so much for being here, Chelsey.
Hey, I am very excited to judge some Go Bags, so thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being on it. We were chatting a little bit beforehand, and we were realizing that we have so many similar interests in such a weird way. So this is a judging match made in heaven.
Yes, baby. I'm excited.
But what kind of monstrous knowledge are you here to share with us today? Tell us a little bit about your own Go Bag.
Okay, well, first I have a tragedy to share, and that is that my car got broken into and my entire Go Bag. Because I've lived in my truck for a long time, voluntarily traveling around. So I've always had like really good camping gear and just everything that you would ever need to survive if something were to happen. And I like to have it in my truck because it's like if I'm not at home, it's like I'm usually with my truck, so we can just. But yeah, it was totally stolen, including like a knife that my grandpa gave, just like the really emotional stuff.
Yeah.
And I cried my eyes out. And then I started to remake it. So this was a couple months ago. So
well, before we get into remaking it, I think that this just brings up such a good point of something that keeps coming up on Go Bag Challenge. Is that sort of one of the downsides about being a prepper survivalist, right? Is that when you talk about it, you kind of make yourself a target, because ultimately, if you're the one person prepared or the one person with a Go Bag, everyone's going to be like, oh, look, there's the one truck that's still moving along in the apocalypse.
Yeah.
You become a target. But so I'm sorry for your loss, but
That's
happy to hear you're rebuilding. So tell me,
thank you.
What did you decide was most important to start stocking up on again?
Well, for me, it's always the life straw. If you don't know what this is, it's a very inexpensive, beautiful little tool, and it basically turns, I think it's like 99.5% of water into drinkable water. So you could actually, there we go.
I have my own here.
So yeah, you just like pop open both sides. It can be a necklace, apparently, I just found out. And you can throw it in a puddle, stick it right into a nasty puddle, and you can drink beautifully purified water. So that is, for me, if you don't have water, you're done, right? Water,
yes.
You can go without food for quite a while, but water is not, I'm asking someone to grab me another piece that I want to share.
Oh, okay. Well, while you're doing that, we already have a comment from the audience here that you get plus 1,000 points for the life straws. I would agree. I think that they're a great short-term solution, which brings up something that we talked about in the last show, right? Is that you should ultimately have different levels of survival kits, essentially, right? Maybe one you keep on your person at all times, one that you have in your truck or your car, like I do as well, and then one at home. But ultimately, the life straw is meant to get you to a place where you can then find a more sustainable water source. We talked about this before. It is limited.
I don't know how many you get, but it is cheap. That's the thing, is you could buy a few of them, but it's true. You're going to need to find your camp. You're going to need to find your new life. Thank you.
But the life straw helps you because then you can find the best water source, purify it while you're looking for your pot or your pan to boil your water. Yeah. We've talked about this before on the show, right? It's water first, water, shelter, then fire. If you have those three things, you can pretty much get everything else taken care of.
Yes, I agree with that totally. And I think having matches is really good. Just having, I've got now in the truck just a big box of those individual matches. And waterproofing is very important as well. And I think camping gear is really high on my list.
Okay, what would you prioritize as maybe what you think the most important camping gear items?
Sleeping bag and sleeping pad, because for me, I don't know, I used to hitchhike and travel a lot. And that meant kind of, the mystery of like, well, what's going to happen tonight? Where are we going to go? And having that sleeping pad just a thermarest, drop the $80, and it is such a small, it's about this big, and when you're sleeping on it, it just to me feels like I'm sleeping on a bed. So it's like getting sleep is so important. And I don't know, if you're not comfortable and you're doing that night after night after night, it's going to be a nightmare and you're not going to be in your headspace.
I'm so glad you brought that up because we've talked a lot about the idea of comfort, like mental comfort in terms of food or entertainment, but never about sleeping. I'm so glad I have a sleeping bag, but I don't have a sleeping pad. So I'm going to add that to my running list of things
Seriously.
to ask
Make sure
for.
it blows up though. It needs to blow up. Don't get like those yoga mat ones. It's not enough. The blow up one, thermarest or a knockoff are very good. Yes.
Well, someone from our audience here is saying that the Life Straw is allegedly good for 1,000 gallons of water, which again, if it's the apocalypse, I'm going to be trying. Why not? I mean, better something than nothing. All right. So you managed to get your Life Straw. What other items did you stock up on first after your horrible go bag tragedy? Oh, but it looks like we have a little bit of a loss here. I'm sure Chelsey would be joining us back in a second. I know there's been some internet issues. And there they are. You're back.
Yeah, it was a
no worries. It's okay. The zombies are out there. They're just trying to stop us from spreading the knowledge. It's okay.
Yes. So we were saying 1,000 gallons of water. That's amazing, right? Yeah. What did I miss?
I was just asking, what besides your Life Straw did you decide you needed to stock up on again first to replenish your go bag?
Well, I got this multi-tool, which I think is great. It's pretty intense, but it's got, you can open it up and you've got most tools. It pliers, it becomes a knife, can opener, bottle opener, but it's a little more intense than just a Swiss Army knife. There's a lot of other stuff going on. And this I think is really cool. It's just a little, and I did get this on Amazon, but it's a little, I freaked out and I needed items quickly.
That's okay. We've all been in the manic buying stage.
Exactly. So it's very packed to the brim, but it's just really cool. And I think it's by some like serious preppers.
Okay.
Catch my drift. And we've got, everything. There's like a little fishing kit in here. God knows if it works, but you've got your blanket, you've got rope, which I think is important, just a length of rope. It's got, of course, you always need a utensil, and I like this one. It's like a spork. It's a knife and a fork and a spoon. So someone on the comments should come up with a word for this because it is 3 rather than just a spork.
We'll have to brainstorm. I love that.
It's like a little can opener. Look at that.
This is such a good point, though, about having not just that beautiful multi-use tool. I don't know if you saw me bring up on the banner here that the audience is very impressed by your very serious multi-tool. I am as well. Good job on that one. But I think it's all about finding multiple uses for things. If that's the matches, if that's the Life Straw, if that's duct tape or your tarp that you should be having. But we're getting a lot of questions about what should be prioritized here. So I guess yesterday, Josh and Wendy from Shabam say it should be shelter, water, fire, food. As someone who has, like you mentioned, lived in your car, would you think shelter, what's the ranking that you would give between shelter, water, fire, and food?
That's a good question. I think shelter, it feels like, I guess if you have shelter, you're going to be able to get water more easily, or you're going to be able to like store water. So I get that. I do think maybe water first. But that's a really, really hard one. Because for me, it was like I had a Toyota Tacoma with a canopy. So it was like this very cute, nice little living situation, which is kind of always ready and set up to go. So it's just this like, I cannot recommend that enough. If you're going to go big, getting a vehicle that has a back part, because you can throw a bed in there. And then you're not like, if you needed a place to be, you're not vulnerable in the same way because you're inside this thing. You can put black little curtains all around, and most people don't know you're in there, and that
which is also important.
Because you're in the apocalypse. I have another protection tool to share with you soon. I think you know what that is. But I don't know. I think we need I think it's kind of a tie for me. I think it's a tie because if you don't have water, you're gonna be worse off than not having shelter, but it depends on where you are, right? Like I'm in Seattle, it's wet right now, but if it were the summer, I would choose water, I think. Right?
I think as someone who lives in the desert, water would also have to be my priority. And I think you're right. I think for me, they're very parallel needs and necessities. But I would say if you have water, that gives you the energy to maintain your shelter or find another one. Whereas if you just have a shelter and no food, no heat, and no water, then you might just die in your shelter, which that doesn't really help. But tell me about this other item that you have.
Okay. So I think that you need some kind of a protection mechanism. I don't think having a gun is going to be something that everybody's going to be comfortable with. And so beware, a gun-like item is about to be on your screen. Trigger warning. This is my BB gun. And this is a very important tool for me because if anyone were to F with you or come at you for any reason, if you're loaded up with this bad boy, all you have to do is pop them a couple times and they're going to leave you alone. Right? You're not going to kill anybody. You're not going to have to deal with that. But you're going to, if someone's shooting BBs at you, and you can like pump this really fast, it's like you can shoot somebody quite a few times before they get to you. So I think this is a really, really, really good tool. And
the scare factor. Yeah, it looks
factor, like
and I've been shot with a BB gun before and it hurts. So I can attest to that. But the other thing you could use it for too is hunting for small animals,
Little
right?
guys,
You're not making as much of a noise, which is definitely helpful for zombies or alerting other survivors. And BBs are really lightweight to carry, so that's also a huge bonus.
Yeah.
Although someone here, Neil, who's in the UK, not as effective as a cricket bat.
It's not the only weapon I have, Neil.
That's the next show. Is both you can like duel it out virtually. Yeah.
I also have a BB gun that looks like a little revolver type gun, and that's another good intimidation tool. But then it's one of those things too where it can't be like taken from you. I mean, it would suck if you got shot with BBs, but it feels like a safe weapon, and it's fun because you got to have fun. You have to have some joy. You got to have joy. So you set a few cans up, knock them down.
I see no downsides to the BB gun yet. And it looks like we have Diana here right after coronavirus, Amazon sold out of those BB rifles and shortly after stopped selling them.
Wow.
Very interesting.
Weird.
That is something, I don't know if you've noticed this, but as prepping for the Go Bag Challenge and ZAM and just talking to friends and family about prepping, which has become more relevant this year as some people I think have been exposed to the idea more than others with COVID and the current political climate, that a lot of things are sold out right now. And I think that that's just such a good message that this is kind of the mentality you need to have all the time, not just when something terrible has happened. So when did you start developing this like prepper mentality or survival sort of skill set?
Well, when I was growing up, my dad, who I only lived with until I was like about 3 years old, but I would see him every weekend. And he was very much a conspiracy theorist and very much along many, many years of his obsession was dedicated to 2012, to the Mayan apocalypse. And there was like a belief in that was a certainty. So it wasn't like, oh, maybe we should be prepared for this. It was like, this is going to happen. And so that's also my show is about conspiracy theories and how they affect us and our culture. And so for me, my prepping came out of that conspiracy mindset, which of course can be super duper dangerous, as we know right now. But it wasn't, my dad was always like a left-wing dude. So it wasn't the same vibe as like militia conspiracy groups. But yeah, we would watch a lot of specials on how to purify water or how to do, build things. But yeah, it was very much like on this day, it's not, it's not a climate change apocalypse. It's like, boom, all the volcanoes are going to explode. There's going to be 1,000-foot waves, and then it also had its spiritual side. So it was like a weird experience for sure, but it rubbed off on me because I also like collecting things. So it's it doesn't feel like it's coming out of a place of fear necessarily. It's just like, the Mayan apocalypse didn't happen. I was in my early 20s by then and knew that it probably wasn't
We're
going
all
to happen.
still here.
We are still here, but there was a time, when I was in high school and stuff, that like when you receive this message over and over again, you're going to kind of buy into it. And there was a part of me that was like, man, that like teenage part of you that's very idealistic and it's like, well, maybe if that happened, we could all start over and we could rebuild the world we want. But of course, that's not really how.
This brings up such a good topic here. So what is the difference, and I still struggle with an answer for this, between preparation and paranoia? As someone who kind of has, because I didn't start getting into prepping and survival stuff until like my late teens, early 20s, from getting really into horror movies and seeing all these things play out. And I was a Girl Scout, so I've been told to always be prepared. That's just kind of how I was raised.
Totally.
But what is the difference between paranoia and prepping?
Well, I think, to speak to my own experience, it was one of those things that started out kind of fun, right? Like this whole Mayan apocalypse. And it, like I mentioned, it was like imagining sort of like having a commune and like being a little hippie kid. I was really, really stoked on that idea, but I wasn't thinking about sort of like the greater implications. It was just like a selfish kind of experience of it. And then my dad sort of did the like with conspiracy theories and everything. I was into conspiracy theories, which is something I cop to a lot on the show, but it didn't go to the dark place as much. And I think what happens with paranoia is it's usually influenced by conspiracy theories. I would maybe say always, because right now we're experiencing sort of this idea that Democrats are some satanic cult, right? We're hearing that. And that's scary, right? It's like you can't come up with a better villain than like a satanic cult pedophile ring. And that's something that comes back in our culture again and again. But these stories evoke a lot of fear if you don't have the skills of critical thinking and if you want to believe them, right? If you have this confirmation bias going on. And so I think it's just so easy to get caught up in these ridiculous stories that are sort of tailored either intentionally from wherever or just crafted in our psychology with our fear, right? So we have these stories that I know you're familiar with just the weird stories of our culture, but it's that, I think, where you start to say, I think the government is coming to get me, which means I need to become pro-guns because I don't want the government to not have my guns, right?
I think you're right. I think preparation and paranoia both have fear at the center. And maybe it's just my own experience. But from what you're saying, I think I agree. It's when you start pointing the finger at someone else for your own safety, that's when you start moving into the paranoia. Whereas preparation, I think that it's like if it's robots, humans, zombies, aliens, like whatever, I'm trying to prep for it all rather than designating like one group or type of person as the bad people.
Yes.
But with that being said, I would like to bring in our contestant for today. So our contestant we have here is Cathryn Townsend. Hello, Cathryn. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, glad to be here and glad to be thinking about prepping myself actually for any future worries.
So before we get into looking at your actual go bag, can you tell us a little bit about what made you start even prepping any kind of go bag kit?
Well, a lot of the stuff I just happen to have lying around. I'm an anthropologist and I have worked in some really remote places and had to live in conditions without electricity, without running water. And there are certain things that are just really useful to have. I know that. And so things like my pocket knife, I kind of pretty much always have
Let's pull up the bag. Let's see. All right, I see the pocket knife there. I also see this very cute cat. Tell us about
that's Pikachu.
And why would you have Pikachu in your go bag?
Well, she goes everywhere with me, so like she kind of just has to be there. She's my constant companion, and I can't imagine life without her. So obviously she's in the go bag.
100%. This goes to that comfort aspect, right?
Yes.
She can give you any level of comfort. And I've seen enough horror movies to know that cats can also kill pests for you. And this is something that came up with Danielle, our medieval expert, in one of the earlier Go Bag Challenge episodes. She was like, antibiotics are so important because medicine is something that is kind of hard to prep for or even recreate, right, in an apocalyptic situation. So having a built-in pest control system, since we know that pests like rodents and birds bring a lot of disease, I'm thinking Pikachu might be one of the strongest items in your go bag.
Well, maybe she could also bring me some pests so that I could eat them.
I like where your head's at. What else are we seeing here, Chelsey, that we think is good, bad, needs improvement?
Let's see. Well, I'm interested in that duck. You were talking about it a little bit, but do you want to tell us what that little rubber ducky is?
So the rubber ducky is just my mobile phone battery charger thing, which it's got that ring on it it's normally attached to my little handbag, and I carry it around. But I'm assuming that after some time that we're not going to have access to electricity. So it's just for sort of connecting with people, maybe ringing up my mother in the UK, my sister in South Africa, and being like, I'm on the way, I'm going to try and reach you. But I'm assuming that, I'm just going to discard that stuff at some point. And really, my bag is really like, it's geared to be quite lightweight and that I can just carry with me, because I'm assuming I'm not always going to have access to a vehicle or to people with a vehicle, that kind of thing. It's all got to be very portable. And that's something I learned from hunter-gatherer people. They don't carry a lot of stuff around. You make whatever you need on the go. Like whatever tools you need to fashion.
To make the tools. Right. That makes sense.
Smart.
Yes.
All right. What else? Are those binoculars that I see?
They are. I think that's quite useful to have. I'm a little bit of a birder, so I normally use them for that. But I think it's useful to, like, in case there's zombies, like if you're hiding out in a tree or something and you want to know, is it safe to go to sleep? You can check out the landscape. You can, like if you need to hunt, they might be useful to kind of get a sense of where the prey animals are. Yeah.
Or prey humans. I mean, I think this is something that is really important in any kind of survival mindset, is just situational awareness. And I think that's something that's taught a lot in like police and military sort of situations, but it's something everyone could benefit from. And using binoculars to say, are those group of people coming with torches and BB guns and stakes, or are they coming at me, with open arms and baskets of food, which of course is an exaggeration. Neither of those things hopefully would ever happen, but just being aware of your surrounding, and that includes what you can't see with the naked eye. So I like binoculars. Right. I like that. What else do we see we're liking? Someone was asking, do you have an essential oil bottle in there? Or I see a couple different vials and containers here. What can you tell us about that?
So I have a very small medical kit. It's got some, syringes and things, because I'm used to carrying those around, and you don't want to have a contaminated one if you need to inject yourself. And I have a antiviral drug there in the vial. Got a couple of antibiotics, some basic dressings and that kind of thing. Tea tree oil is in my kind of cosmetic bag. Okay. I find that so useful for so many things. And then thyme oil as well for like insect bites and stuff. That stuff runs out, but tea tree oil can be quite long lasting. You only use a little bit of it at a time. So
where did you get, sorry, really quick, where did you get that? Where did you get the antibiotics and your like little medical kit? Something you can just get? So
like some of it, you can actually, just order some of that stuff. Some of it I got on the black market, like some I bought in Africa and from medical friends or what have you. Like I'm used to self-medicating in the field because there are no doctors, where I go. So, like I have to be kind of aware of that stuff and be, I wouldn't advocate for anybody else to self-medicate, but I've made the choice that like I'm going into those circumstances sometimes, and so like I'd rather be able to like know how to treat myself if something goes wrong than not.
That's situational awareness. You were aware enough of the environment and the resources that you would have that you prepared accordingly. Cathryn, we do have another question here. What else have you learned from hunter-gatherers about how to be prepared?
So hunter-gatherers really rely on one another. So like you'll see I have a pack of cards in there so that I can use that as a bridge maybe to like hooking up with other people if I get separated from my friends or anything like that. You rely on other people for the skills that you don't have a lot. You don't like hoard a whole lot of stuff. You want to hoard people. You want to hoard social relationships really and rely on that, and try not like fear everybody around you, try not to dehumanize them, like try and think of them first and foremost as potential cooperators, potential lifelines. And because really what will be the worst case scenario is if we all kind of like hunker down on our own and terrified of each other. That would be like the worst nightmare.
Which is very American.
So,
Yeah, unfortunately. So I think this is actually a great question, both for Cathryn and for you, Chelsey, since you both had sort of different experiences about the same thing. Is how do you build this sense of camaraderie and trust, including in stressful situations?
You want to start, Cathryn?
So for me, it's about like showing vulnerability, being fairly humble and be like, I really need help, like just put it out there. And, just like saying, I can offer this, I can be a shoulder to cry on, be clear about what you have to offer and what you need from people, I guess. Yeah.
Well, and I feel like you probably know more about this than I do, but we are naturally inclined toward community. Would you say that that's true human nature wise, evolutionarily? And so I think if you go into it knowing that you're hardwired for this, then maybe you just won't be as you I don't like energy. That's not a thing I really like to talk about, but sort of like what you bring to the situation. It's like if you come into a situation with a dog, not to ever compare anyone to a dog, but you know what I'm saying? It's like they can tell your emotion, they can tell what you're coming in with, even if you're kind of hiding it. So I think if you come in and you are the first one to sort of, like you're saying, like show humility or smile or just give some signal that you're safe, I think way more often than not, people are going to want to return that versus take advantage of you or harm you or something like that. Because we'll all have things that other people don't have. So it makes sense. We will survive better together. And I think if you're willing to be the first person to sort of like do whatever movement you want to do to tell someone.
Right, because I've talked so much my own work about like language being so significant, but we forget that body language is also a means of communication. I mean, just like you said, with dogs or birds or even cats, right? Is that so even if it's not about energy, coming at someone with your BB gun up or your fists raised, right? Or with a frown, you're automatically telling them that you are a threat, or at least you're trying to come across as threatening, which might work in certain situations, but exactly like Cathryn's saying, if you're trying to create camaraderie, that's probably not the best route to go.
Yeah. And you could probably even disarm, that was an accident pun, but you could probably disarm someone, even if they came like, ugh, you could just be like, hey, like, I don't want, like, I'm not here to do anything. I don't know. Maybe it won't work, but you just don't know. People are unpredictable. That's for sure, especially when we're freaked out and in need. So
I think that brings us to our final sort of question here. Are the zombie stories movies wrong that humans are the biggest danger in the zombie apocalypse?
I think Emily would say it's robots.
Besides the robot, but people make the robots, so I'm still gonna go with people.
Okay.
No,
all right,
I
all
think
right.
that's one of the things that I find so intriguing about monsters, but the undead in particular, is that they are so close to being us. Literally, a heartbeat away or a parasitic infection away. And it's really the living humans that are the scary ones. And again, it's just about being situationally aware. But I don't know.
Yeah, for me, it's that threat of dehumanizing people and thinking of them as zombies that is going to be the thing that creates the zombie apocalypse. So I think we need to think of each other's basic humanity first.
I think that's the perfect
Yeah.
note to end on. So unfortunately, we're all out of time, but thank you, Chelsey and Cathryn, for sharing your knowledge with us. Quick, Chelsey, I would think Cathryn would be able to survive. I think you'd be able to get like a solid week with your go bag, especially if you made some friends along the way. What's your verdict?
If you packed some water, make sure you got some water. Other than that, I think, I think you got a lot of great stuff. A lot of stuff I didn't think of. Your medicine. That is my biggest takeaway that I'm very impressed by.
And I'm going to look for one of those BB gun things.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys so much for being on the show. So that's all the time we have today. Thank you, viewers, for joining us. But if you are registered for ZAM 2020, head over to the interactive workshops. And don't forget, tonight at 8:30 p.m. AZ time is the No Brainer Quiz Night. Bring a frosty beverage and your big brain for No Brainer, our zombie-packed trivia night. Make sure to sign up ahead of time, so look for an email from Christina or send her one. And until then, stay aware, stay prepared, and we will see you here next time on the Go Bag Challenge.
It's crazy, but it seems so logical. I can't deny that there is something supernatural with you.